In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the nose and how the nose is probably the most misunderstood part of the face to draw, but actually could be the simplest to draw if we kind of rearrange our thoughts on the thing. If you squint at the nose, we see the darkest parts are these nostrils, and then maybe a little bit of shading on the sides and a tiny bit underneath there. The nostrils and the point of the nose and these flares around the nostrils are pretty lined up horizontally like this, and then they go up towards the bridge to the eyebrows. The shading down the sides of the nose are very subtle in this photograph. Depending on your light, you might see a sharper shadow there, or both sides. But in this example, it's very subtle. There's a little bit of a highlight up this way, but this nose and the cheeks seem to be the same value as they swoop down that way. So we want to probably minimize the amount of drawing we actually do up here and focus more on this part right there. So let's take a minute and break this down into the simplest shapes possible. So as I look at it, again, I kind of see this form of the bottom here. It's kind of just maybe an oval shape that all this stuff is contained in. And of that oval, the nostrils are near the bottom of that part. So I imagine these things as like little eyebrow shapes, and they are facing inward like that. Okay, I've got a lot of extra sketching here that I'm going to ignore because I'm going to blend a lot of this out with this thing, and I'm going to use it probably for the rest of this picture, actually. I will use my eraser. So I'm going to kind of shade in that oval with the blender. And I'm going to use the shades of that to smooth it into the cheeks. So if the nose is here, the cheeks would be over this way. I want to get some of that value or color into the cheeks. Okay, and now what I'm going to notice here is this little kind of V shape between the nostrils. So I'm going to just blend that in like that. And maybe a little bit of a darkness right there where the nostril flare is in shade. This side's not so much. And now what I need to do is just spend some time erasing a lot of this mess that I've made. The ball of the nose right here and the bridge of the nose that goes up, there's no really dark line there like I have in this drawing here, so I'm going to erase that part. So it's not as obvious. And then I'm noticing that the cheek is darker than this nostril right there, where here it's all kind of blending together. So I have to use my eraser to get rid of some of that. And the same thing on this side, to erase the bright part while leaving the shade of the cheek alone. If you look really close, there's a bit of a highlight on the face side of this nostril. So I'm going to put a little highlight there, just with the corner of my eraser, and same on this side, that way. And then I'm going to look at the shape of it. I'm noticing that this kind of wraps around and kind of goes a little bit more straighter up than I have it here. So I might use my pencil barely to help me remember that, and go ahead and blend that in on the shadow side. Go up, 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 and be careful you don't exaggerate the shadow either. It's very easy to make everything darker because you're focusing on that thing a lot. I just did it there too. I over shaded. So I'm going to have to pull it back a little bit and let it be less dark. So what I did there, I kind of used a crosshatch technique almost with my eraser. I'm erasing some of the shade, but not all of it. That way I can blend the two together, the light and the dark. And then a little bit more on this side. There's a really different variation between the shadow of this cheek and that lightness of that nostril. So I'm going to push that a little darker around here too. So I'm going to use this pencil point and kind of exaggerate that line a bit and blend it out again, kind of pulling the shadow into the cheek while avoiding the nose parts if I can. And I'll just kind of ramp this up a little bit to give me an indication that this is the bridge of the nose and where it's going to be leading up into where the eyebrows would be up in this area here. But for now, it's looking pretty good. It's looking a little bit like this picture, except a little more, I guess, abstracted. This nose thing is pretty tricky to make because of all these interwoven shapes. We got nostrils, we've got the bridge of the nose, we have all the different shadows that we have depending on the light that you're taking the picture in, or if you're using a mirror or something like that. I also see here there's a little bit of a highlight right under that V section here. So I'm going to see if I can just pull some of those highlights out with my eraser. And I might just leave it like that. It's looking somewhat nose-ish. It's as basic as I can explain it, and everybody's noses are going to be different shapes, and you're going to have different lighting conditions and different angles even. If you take your photograph and you're tilting your eyes towards the camera or away from the camera, you're going to see more or less of the nostrils showing there. Then this leads down to the lips a little bit, which we haven't covered yet. But for now, I think this is a pretty good start on my nose. The nose might be one of the most challenging things to teach about drawing faces, at least faces that are facing towards the viewer or the camera. It's somewhat symmetrical. As you're looking straight at the camera, you're going to have two nostrils, left and right. You're going to have kind of skin shapes around those nostrils. And if we draw them alone with no shade, it's going to look extremely abstract, like this is kind of a little bit exaggerated. If I draw the bridge of the nose with lines too, we don't have actually like lines that go up towards our eyebrows so sharp like that. What we're going to need to do is use the blender mostly to show the difference of light between especially these nostril flares, I guess you'll call them, and the cheeks. So I already have lines here. I'm going to darken the lines and pull the shadow outwards towards the cheek and see if I can just smooth that out a lot, leaving this as white as possible or as light as possible for a highlight. And these lines, I don't want these at all. These are going to be too dark, and you're going to probably not want so much darkness up there either. There might be a little bit of shade, but if you exaggerate that, it's going to look not as realistic. There's going to be some shading under here probably, and perhaps, depending on your lighting conditions again, maybe some of this is going to be shaded, and there might be some shade on the side of the bridge of the nose right there. And on this side, I'm going to pull this shadow towards the cheeks too. leaving the nostril alone. Trying to keep it as bright as possible and smooth this out as much as you can. You might have lights overhead as you take your pictures, and that might be even casting a shadow down towards your lip, so I might even darken that a little bit. All right, and then right here, I'm gonna transition the bridge of the nose down the slope of the nose towards the cheeks using the blender only.